Hey everybody, Mr. Longo here, and this video is going to cover completing the square. Now, this is not going to go very deep into completing the square. To be honest with you, the purpose of this video is to lead up to how you write the equation of a circle in graphing form. So, to start, just a few basics, old school stuff. Expanding, this is called the square of a binomial because it's two terms and the quantity is squared. Which means you can't say x squared plus 9. You actually have to write out the binomial twice and multiply it together, which many of you may call foiling. So that would give you x squared plus 3x plus 3x plus 9. And of course, those guys would become x squared plus 6x plus 9. Now I want you to notice a little pattern there. This number 3 here times 2 gives you the middle. And this number 3 squared gives you the end. So that's going to be a pretty important thing coming up. So factoring. This is going to be a factor that's going to simplify to the square of a binomial. I know that because half of 8 squared is going to give me 16. Half of 8 is going to give me 4. The square root of 16 is going to give me 4. Similar to this pattern. But watch. What multiplies to a positive 16 but adds to a negative 8? And obviously we're going to have our x's here. But the only way to multiply to a positive is if the symbols are the same. So in this case, they're both negative. And what multiplies to 8 or to 16 but adds to 8? That would be 4 and 4. So since these terms are the exact same, we can write them as the square of a binomial. That's just factoring. Okay? So that's an important thing to use in many different ways in terms of algebra, but again, this video is geared towards writing the equation of a circle. So how do we complete the square then? So if we wanted to turn this into a trinomial that would factor to a square of a binomial, what you need to do is get the c value first. And to get that c value is similar to what I already talked about up here. This negative 4 squared will give you 16, and times 2 would give you a negative 8. So all you have to do is take half of this b value. So obviously, if we were in ax squared plus bx plus c, half of b squared will give you c. So c is equal to b over 2 squared. So half of 6 is 3, squared is 9. So c is going to be equal to 9. So this will give us x squared plus 6x plus 9. Okay? Again, half of b squared, so 6 over 2 is 3, squared gives you 9. And then to write it as the square of a binomial, you don't have to factor, you can if you want to, but it's going to be x and half of this number, or the square root of that number. But you need to be careful because it's got to follow this symbol. So half of a positive 6 would be a positive 3 squared. And that should look extremely similar because we already did that. We already have x squared plus 6x plus 9. It comes from x plus 3 squared. So again, I did that so you can kind of see where it's coming from again. So this one, why don't you try to find c on your own? Do exactly what I just did. Take half of b and square it, and then write it as the square of a binomial. Give it a try. So if you would have taken negative 12 and divide that by 2 and square it, negative 12 divided by 2 is a negative 6 squared is a positive 36. So first step, x squared minus 12x plus 36. If you have a minus 36, you need to remember a negative 6 times a negative 6 is going to give you a positive 36. And then it's x, that symbol, half of that number, squared. That's written as the square of a binomial. Okay? So that's how you find c and then write that trinomial in terms of square of a binomial. So what we're going to do is we're going to complete the square again, but this time we have other numbers involved. Now this can take you in a couple of different directions. This can take you to writing the equation of a parabola in graphing form. This can take you to solving for x. There's a couple of different things this does. So knowing how to complete the square is an important skill for many different aspects. So to complete a square and write it in terms of a binomial, the first thing you have to do is only have an x squared and an x. So similar to the last question, we still have our x squared minus 12x. But the first thing we have to do is move that 4 to the other side of the equation, because you cannot have it there. But since we're working in terms of an equation, you have to balance an equation. So you can't just, so if you had 5 rocks in your right hand and 5 rocks in your left hand, you're balanced. But if you were to add 2 rocks to your right hand, you need to add 2 rocks to your left hand to keep your hands balanced. So in this case, if we were to square this, or turn this into a square of a binomial, the first thing you'd have to do is take half of your negative 12 and square it again. Just like we did in our last example, we would add 36 to the left side. But to keep this equation balanced, you also have to add 36 to the right side. Okay? And by doing that, you now have x minus 6 quantity squared equals 32. Now again, you could take this in multiple places. You can subtract it back to the left and have y is equal to x minus 6 squared minus 32, which would be the graphing form equation of a parabola. You could also square root both sides and say that x minus 6 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 32, which of course could be simplified to 4 root 2, and then add 6 to both sides. So x would equal 6 plus or minus 4 root 2. There's different things you can do once you're in that form, but getting to that form is crucial. After that, it's whatever the directions are telling you to do. Okay? So for this next example, I don't need you to solve. I just need you to write it as the square of a binomial and have it equal to another number. Pause the video and give it a shot. Let's see what you get. So again, the first step is x squared plus 2x is equal to 5 because you had to subtract 5 from both sides first. And then you had to leave yourself a little bit of room on both sides because you need to balance this equation. So half of 2 is 1, squared is 1, so you add 1 to both sides. And then you just have to write this side as x plus half of the 2 is 1, squared is equal to 6. And we're done. We're going to leave it like that for now. Again, the rest depends on the directions. So what we are going to do is use this to write the equation of a circle in graphing form. Now, the equation of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to the radius squared. So h and k are going to represent the center of your circle, and r is obviously the radius of the circle. So it is extremely easy to graph a circle when it's in graphing form. It's very complicated to graph a circle if you are in this big old hodgepodge of stuff. Sometimes it's x squared plus y squared plus 2x plus 8y is equal to 8. So, I mean, first thing you have to do is usually manipulate the equation. But if you know how to complete the square, it's actually not that difficult of a thing to do. So follow along for the first example, and what we are going to do is we're going to turn this equation into an equation of a circle in this form. And like I said, if you know how to complete the square, it's not that bad. So the first thing you want to do is get your x squareds and x's together if they're not already together, and same with your y squareds and y's. But you want to leave some space after each. And of course, the first thing you should always do is get the number to the right side. So we have an x squared plus 2x. And I'm going to leave some space. And then I'm going to do y squared plus 8y. And again, I'm going to leave a little bit of space. And that, of course, is going to be equal to 8 plus your 2 spaces that you're going to use to balance this equation. So x squared plus 2x, first thing you're going to have to do is take half of 2, which is 1, squared, which is still 1, and you add it to both sides. The next thing you're going to have to do is take half of 8, which is 4, square it, and add 16 to both sides. Okay? And now you're ready to write them in terms of the square of a binomial. So this one is going to give you x plus half of 2 is 1 squared. And then over here we're going to have a plus sign in the middle, and we have our y plus half of 8 is 4 squared. And that right there is going to give you equal to all of these numbers added up, which is 25. And there you are. You're graphing the equation of a circle. It's got a center of -1, -4, and it has a radius of 5 because this represents r squared. So 5 squared gives you 25. Okay? So that's how you use completing the square to write an equation of a circle in graphing form. So what I would like you to do is quickly pause the video and give that last one a shot. See if you can handle it on your own. If you can, you're just a rock star and you're ready to move on to actually graphing circles and ellipses and hyperbolas. Pause and give it a try. So again, I already had it organized for you, so you didn't have to reorganize anything. Just put a little space after your 4x, and then we would have to do the same thing for our y. So we have y squared plus 6y. Leave a little bit of space, and that's equal to, first step, subtract the 2, which is 4. And then we have to add 2 terms to that side. Half of 4 is 2, squared is still 4, but we're going to add 4 to both sides. Half of 6 is 3, squared is 9, so we're going to add 9 to both sides. And now we just need to combine these guys together. So over here we're going to have our x minus half of 4 is 2 squared plus y plus half of 6 is 3 squared is equal to 4 plus 9 is going to give us 17. And we now have the equation of a circle in graphing form for that guy. So it's just a big old mess that you have to work with. Again, it's not too crazy. You just got to be really careful. And that's about it. So this is Longo, and I'm out. See you, bye.